Thank you very much. This is Peter Casper. I call the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting for February 1st, 2024 to order at 7 p.m. I'd like to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, so please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So additions or changes to the agenda. Mr. Tierney, you're on mute, sir. Andy, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
In light of having town staff here and recognition of their time, after old business, item 8B, if we could move up from new business, items A, items B, items C, and items E. That would be right after 8B.
Okay. Any objections from the Board of Selectmen? I know all are in attendance, I think. Okay, no objections? Okay, I don't see objections, so that's fine. So we'll move 9A, B, C, and E to right after 8B. Thank you, Mr. Tierney. And the next section of the agenda is for public comment. The section of the agenda is reserved for persons in attendance who wish to briefly address the Board of Selectmen. The board requests that a person's comments be limited to a single period lasting 3 minutes or less. While the board respects the right of the public to provide comment, this time is not intended for open discussion or a board response. Residents who wish to request a dialogue should make arrangements to do so through the town manager's office or through me, the board chair. Persons wishing to comment, please type comment and your name in the chat box and you will be recognized. And again, as I said before, we welcome open dialogue and exchange with the public, just this particular and we're very happy to
in the beginning.
So, Donna, anything comment?
So the public comment from Grace Collins. If anybody who is not commenting could please mute their microphones. Thank you. Grace Collins.
Great. Okay, go right ahead, please.
I'm Grace Collins, resident of Hebron. Proclamation can help people to feel like their town cares and will protect them. I think it would really be appreciated by everyone if this proclamation was passed, so people in our town feel safe, heard, and included. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Other public comments? Donna?
Lily Rhodes has a public comment.
Lily, go ahead.
Good evening. I just wanted to thank you for the Black History Month proclamation. I really appreciate Hebron paying attention to a very important bit of our history and our current social dynamics. So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you, Lily. Other public comments?
And next up is Nikki Collins.
Go right ahead, Nikki.
That's my daughter, 16-year-old that goes to Lyman. So I'm Nikki Collins, also a resident of Hebron. We moved here to Hebron about 5 years ago, January 5 years ago, for all the kind people that we met at the Hebron Harvest or the Hebron Farmers Market and the rural feel. We have farm animals and many folks know that. And when our kids started school, we shortly after realized that there was a really significant lack of diversity. And we moved here kind of suddenly, and it was shocking to me. And I really do wonder if we would have moved here if we had taken the time to educate ourselves on the amounts of diversity here in Hebron, because it's just so important. So our children are paying attention. I say this often, our children are listening. I'm happy to see the movements that our little tiny town has made towards more inclusion. I'm happy to see people show support for proclamations like this. we all want a world where we all feel included, and proclamations like this help us to not only accept people from different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, but also learn from them. And we hope that the board will have a unanimous pass of the Black History Month proclamation.
Thank you very much. Donna?
And next up is Amy Claudio.
Great. Amy, go ahead. Amy? I don't.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Go right ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm writing to, I'm sorry, I'm talking to express my support for the Black History Proclamation. I think that recognizing Black history is a significant part of fostering inclusivity and understanding with our community. And I appreciate the efforts of Select Person Claudia Riley and Tiffany Teely for writing this proclamation. And I believe that this will contribute to our efforts to improve awareness, inclusivity, and equity in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Donna?
So that is it for now.
Okay. Thank you. Andy?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without further ado, next up would be under the good to know special recognition is the Black History Month proclamation.
So I think we would read the proclamation, and I would ask Claudia, you or Tiffany, obviously since you are part of this, if one of you would please volunteer to read the proclamation, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to do the first half, and then Tiffany, you want to jump into the second half? Sound good?
Sure, works for me.
Go ahead, Claudia. Thank you.
Sure. And I just want to thank everybody for helping to write this proclamation, review it, edit it, etc. We're very proud of what's in front of us tonight. So we're going to read this aloud for the audience, the public. Town of Hebron proclamation recognizes Black History Month. Whereas Black History Month, which began in 1926 as Black History Week, is a celebration initiated by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, noted Black scholar, historian, and son of former slaves. And whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month. And Americans of all walks of life come together since then during the month of February to honor the accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And whereas Black culture is American culture and Black stories are essential to the ongoing story of the United States. And whereas Hebron has played a remarkable role in both preventing a local enslaved couple from being sold and provided a welcoming community for freed slaves to live, work, and educate their children here after the Civil War. And whereas Black people have achieved triumphs, successes, and progress, as seen in the end of chattel slavery, dismantling of Jim Crow segregation in the South, increased political representation at all levels of government, desegregation of educational institutions, and the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, among many other notable accomplishments. Go ahead, Tiffany.
And whereas it is essential that we take time to celebrate the immeasurable contributions of Black Americans, honor the legacies and achievements of generations past, and continue to address and work towards reversing injustices of the past. And whereas the 2024 Black History Month theme will highlight the varied history and life of African American arts and artisans, we recognize that in the fields of visual and performing arts, literature, fashion, folklore, language, film, music, architecture, culinary, and other forms of cultural expression, the African American influence has been paramount. And now, therefore, we, the Selectmen for the town of Hebron, proclaim the month of February 2024 as Black History Month, and recognizes, appreciates, and honors African Americans for their leadership, commitment, and vision to improving the health, well-being, and safety for all who live in the town of Hebron. We encourage community members to observe Black History Month and to recognize how diversity strengthens our communities and improves the quality of life for all.
Thank you both very much. Mr. Tierney?
Thank you. Just make sure everybody comes into the office and signs that if you are a select person. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
If we're moving on, item 6 is appointments and resignations. First is the Parks and Recreation resignation. Kimberly Mazzelko submitted a resignation from the Parks and Recs Commission. And there's a proposed motion.
There's a motion, but Mr. Larson, you had your hand raised?
Yes, do we normally vote on the resolution? Just as I thought we did.
You can, it wouldn't hurt. And that way it would be in the record.
Okay, I didn't see that a motion needed to be passed, so absolutely we can go back and go back to make that for the record. So I would ask Claudia or Tiffany if you'd like to make the motion for the board to approve the resolution as presented.
Sure, I'll make the motion for the Board of Selectmen to approve the Hebron proclamation for African American History Month.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll move the question since we have covered the topic, and thank you for doing that, and go to a vote. Mr. Larson?
Dan Larson, aye.
Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you. Claudia?
Claudia Riley, aye.
Peter Casper, aye. The resolution passes unanimously. Thank you, Dan, for bringing that up and allowing us to have it properly recorded in the record.
Thank you.
Apologize for that. Mr. Tierney, please continue.
Yes, I apologize as well. Good catch, Stan. Thank you. So once again, under the Parks and Recs, there's a resignation, and then there's a proposed motion. If somebody wants to read that. Or I can read that, whatever you want to do.
Pete, you're on mute.
Not very effective. Keith, could you read the motion, please? Thank you for that.
I move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen accept the resignation of Kimberly Mazzelko from the Parks and Recs Commission with regret and thanks for her service to the town of Hebron.
Motion's read. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. If you're opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain, please note that for the record as well. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you. Claudia?
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you, Peter Casper, aye. The motion passes unanimously. And as noted, thank you again, Kim, for all your service. I appreciate it. Please continue, Andy.
Thank you. Item B, Commission on Aging appointments. 2 individuals have expressed interest in serving on the Commission on Aging. First one is Rebecca Tasman, D, Democrat, and Margaret Gibbs, also D, Democrat. And then there's a proposed motion to be read.
Okay, I will read the motion, and then we'll open it for discussion and obviously contribution from either one of the folks mentioned if they wish to address the board as well. So move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen appoint Margaret Gibbs as, I jumped to the second one. Move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen appoint Rebecca Tamsin as a regular member of the Commission on Aging for a term to run until December 2026. We'll read each motion separately then? Okay, we'll stop there. I'm sorry. So any discussion on that from the board first? Okay, Rebecca, I see you're in attendance, so thank you for joining us. Would you like to address the board or offer any comments?
Sure, thank you for having me. I am looking forward to being appointed to the Commission on Aging. I feel like I have a lot of expertise in the field of geriatrics and caring for the elderly. So I am happy to be here and looking forward to serving.
Thank you. And
Welcome.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for stepping forward. We really do appreciate it. It's folks like you that make the town the way it is in terms of bringing a good, qualified, quality volunteers. And so thank you very much for your interest and your willingness to serve our community.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Anyone else wish to comment from the board? Any additional discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, aye, please signify by saying aye, and if opposed, nay, or please note if you wish to abstain. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you, Dan. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you. Claudia?
Claudia Riley, aye.
Peter Casper, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Rebecca, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
And moving along, move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen appoint Margaret Gibbs as a regular member of the Commission on Aging for a term to run until December of 2025. It's the motion. I open it up for any discussion. Any discussion? Is Margaret in attendance? I don't see her on my screen, but
Yeah, she's here. This is Tanya. I'm
Oh, okay.
a Commission on Aging Chair. I'm happy to hear that Becky's on as well, but Margaret's here.
Margaret, is there anything you'd like to share with the board or those in attendance?
Well, I'm very happy to be assigned to this. I'm old and I feel
You are very, very experienced and can
There
help
you
the
go.
committee along.
Great.
Okay, well, again, on behalf of the board and our community, thank you for your willingness to serve and bring your talents to the town in this capacity. So thank you very much for doing that. And unless there's further discussion, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye, opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Dan?
Excuse me, Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you, Dan. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you, Claudia?
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you, Claudia. Peter Casper, also I vote aye. And the proposed motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. Welcome.
Okay. Mr. Tierney, we move to the town manager's report.
Once again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Under the town manager's report for the Board of Selectmen, it's February 1st, thank God. So far so good with winter. I'm happy to report that the town has received a grant for the Jones Street road improvements to the tune of $985,200. So we applied for that grant, and we were lucky enough to be one of the 10 towns that received almost $1 million, which will offset the money we spend on our road program. So kudos to the town of Hebron. I think that's going to help everybody. That's a pretty well-used road. We had a advertising campaign to keep the Views magazine, which is in town, that was in jeopardy of possibly sunsetting because they had lost a bunch of advertisements that support paying for that. So I work with them, and luckily for now, we've gotten some new advertisements to keep that afloat. So that was a little bit of an undertaking. So we were working on that. As you well know, we've been working on the ARPA projects and updates for the Board of Selectmen, and we continue to do that. We sent out a new spreadsheet, I believe it was this morning, to everybody with the departments that are in charge of the projects. We segregated completed projects, and then we gave you the other list of projects that we're working on. So hopefully everybody's okay with that. If not, give us a call and let us know. Once again, it's February, so we're very deeply involved in the budget review with the department heads and the CIP. We placed the CIP in this packet for the Board of Selectmen unchanged, so you can see the amount of items and the costs that was requested. Originally, I have reduced that quite a bit, and at the next meeting, this will be a first glance for the Board of Selectmen. The next meeting, I'll show what at least I think is the town manager's reduction should be, but it's up to ultimately the Board of Selectmen's final decision. So busy with that. We hired a new children's librarian after 20+ year stint. So we have a new person in that, going to join us shortly in that position. She comes very highly qualified. So we're hoping to kick that off in the middle of this month. And then we, as the chairman of the public Chatham Health District, we had our public hearing to set our budget. And I'm happy to say we have a very small increase to the towns that belong to that. So it was almost flat. They were coming with a 2.5% salary increase for the employees, but at the last minute, there was a push to try to retain our trained employees, so they went with a 3%. So that's the only change to that budget, which is minimal to the town. So we'll have those final numbers tomorrow, and we'll be plugging those into the town's budget. And we were lucky enough to have a kickoff meeting at the town hall for the Wall Street, Route 316 and Route 66 intersection upgrades. So that'll be started in the spring. We're also working to have a kickoff meeting for the Wall Street sidewalks, which will also be starting in the spring. Both those contracts have been awarded, and we're getting the schedules set as we speak. So that's all good news. That's all I had for right now, unless there's any questions on that.
Any questions from the board? Andy, I would just make one comment, if I may. When you mentioned Lucky with the grant, I think it's important that we, from time to time, and you'll see it later in sort of the process that we undergo, there's a lot of hard work and talent that goes into preparing grant applications, and we continue to enjoy the benefit of that. But I think it's sort of make your own luck in that regard. So the town continues to do a very good job in recognizing and applying for grants. So I just want to make sure that I made that comment. When you said Lucky, there's an element of, I guess, a little bit of luck, but you make your own luck by preparing and doing it in the right way, in the right time, and with the right information and the right story. And we continue to see success after success in relative to grants. And for a town our size, getting those grants are critical for us to move so many of these projects forward. So thank you for you and all the folks that are preparing grants on the behalf of the citizens. So thank you. Dan, I think I see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mimic the same kind of thought patterns. I mean, really, all of these grants that are applied for and all, for the most part, are done by literally a handful of people. 4 or 5 people are carrying the bulk of this weight, as also doing all the day-to-day things in the town hall. We are just very, very fortunate to have such dedicated staff. The amount of hours put into doing any of these grants, and I've been involved even with the fire department, a lot of times it's just page after page after page after page. It's just, it's daunting. And if it's not done right, it gets kicked out. So my hat's off to our staff. It's just, the things they put up with and have to do is commendable, and it shows in the pudding. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, thank you. Mr. Tierney, that moves us to 8A under old business.
Yes, thanks again. 8A would be the American Rescue Plan State and Local Recovery Funds update. Selectmen conducted an ARPA workshop on Monday, which was January 29th, and the updated ARPA spreadsheet will be provided at the meeting, and project updates will be provided as needed. I also have Matt Bordeaux. I believe Matt's with us, I believe, by now, I hope. He's going to speak to looking to get direction from the Board of Selectmen moving forward with the pickleball courts, so we can try to get moving and get that designed so it's ready for the construction season.
So that'll happen here. So before you get started, Matt, with that, I just obviously thank you to Donna, who provided updates based on the feedback from the workshop. And so I just continue to encourage the board, as you look at this, digest this format, provide the town with some feedback. We obviously won't go into that here because we just had the workshop, but as you look at this, and if you want to continue to provide feedback relative to it, please let Donna know if there's a better way that we can present this. But thank you for doing that. So I guess we'll turn it over to Matt so we can cover a key item within this ARPA fund structure.
Okay, thanks you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. It's Matt Bordeaux. I'm the town planner. tonight, I kind of want to follow up with the ARPA workshop earlier in the week when the board engaged in a brief discussion on priority projects. Certainly pickleball is one of those. You know, the sport has skyrocketed in the recent years. And while it may have been a desire for a handful now, we're at a point where, you know, we're seeing all the communities around us invest, and we're really looking forward to doing that as well. We think we have an opportunity to put together a project, put out the bid this spring, and hopefully see under construction this calendar year. And so, you know, in moving through this, you know, this project in an expedited manner is important, but I do want you to know that we're working with Craig Bryant, town manager, Donna Lanza, a few others to do a thorough search of available options for a location for a pickleball court. This would probably be a two-phase project. The first one, I think we have the authorization from the board to commit enough to get us 3 pickleball courts to start. But considering the popularity of the project or the you know, the activity, we anticipate and plan for an eventual 6 total. So as I said, you know, as we engaged in a search, we you know, we kept a couple priorities in mind due to the, you know, the demographics and in our effort to make a vibrant and you know, dynamic downtown. We thought it would be appropriate to keep it toward the center to the degree that we can. Certainly in a location that's accessible, convenient, and has the room for complementary assets or excuse me, improvements that may be associated. We know that, you know, we'll want to do some meaningful landscaping, you know, in the event that it does become as popular as we hope. We'll probably want to have some seating area, some dedicated parking. We also want to minimize conflicts with other potential user groups in the immediate proximity. And leave open the possibility. So in other words, not box ourselves in on other improvements that might, you know, arise. This is an exercise, you know, the rec director and myself are undertaking in the absence of, and this is me making another plug for a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I think we have, you know, some very well-rounded plans, but when it gets to the specifics of our recreation assets in a bedroom community, you know, this is a top priority. So I do want to, you know, mention again, I think it's a great idea that we think about this going forward. But because we have to spend down this ARPA funds and this is a high priority, we want to make sure we get the best that we can. So I'm here basically to propose the use of St. Peter's Field for phase 1 of the project. As the entity appointed to guide the use of the ARPA funds, what I'm requesting tonight is your direction to move forward with the expenditure of additional funds that are going to be required to survey, conduct engineering, and design services associated with the development of this park. I'm going to share with you our most recent iteration. Now, if Donna, you could allow me to share, that'd be great. So just for means of background, there's a little bit of an evolution to the idea of the use of this space. Thank you for that. Bear with me 1 second while I try to find this. Give me 1 moment. Hopefully this is it. Someplace here. Here. Can you all see that?
Yes.
You can just expand it to your screen. I think for some of us, at least for me, if you could make your screen as large as possible.
Exactly.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. So the idea here, again, this is an evolution. This is St. Peter's Field on Church Street. To the south here is Hebron Elementary School. And upon, you know, first thought, we were looking at the use of this abandoned space to the west, or the way you're viewing the screen, to the left of the existing parking area. This is the way school pickup and drop off is conducted, the circulation of traffic through this parking lot and then exiting the same entranceway. We thought maybe there would be some efficiencies in the shared parking, the convenience and the lack of uses in this location. But as we talked a little bit more with the superintendent of schools, and thought a little bit more about how this sport is growing in popularity, there were some limitations to this use, to the use in this location. I think it's important that we consider this a public asset and not a school asset. So the distinction between the two is important as well. So we started to talk to the town engineer, and he's the one who's been drafting these concept plans about the use of the existing curb cut adjacent to the ball field that is going to, or is used and will continue to be used for access to the town center project shed that's been recently located here. And we found that this could be a good opportunity to provide, for now, probably just a gravel parking, likely something that our town forces can construct. And the reuse of this space, displacement of what's substantially become abandoned, ball field. It does get used periodically from time to time for practice purposes, but certainly underutilized. It's under-maintained, and the reality is that to bring it into working order is going to be a substantial investment. So the idea here is to commit to a principal use being pickleball court, but with the potential for additional space to be utilized for other purposes in the future. This concept also provides a future opportunity for a connection between the public, the school drive here. So you could theoretically, and not immediately, but potentially in the future, make a connection between the two, so there's a better circulation of traffic. Could alleviate some of the overflow parking needs during substantial events that occur at the school periodically through the year. This leaves open the opportunity for amenities such as landscaping, seating area, perhaps even like a shaded structure or something like that for folks that are waiting to play. Gives us the opportunity to expand substantially a level field. So stormwater management should not be grading and subsequent stormwater management should not be a substantial issue. So there's of course some feelings and some opinions about the reuse of this space. This does have some historic significance for folks that remember the days when they played there as a youth, or perhaps their children did. But the reality is that this ball field is no longer a necessity for the town, and we're recommending a transition into a new growing recreational asset with the opportunity for future expansion and new opportunities to kind of expand the space. We did acquire this, the town acquired this 50-50 with town funds and with open space funds. It is part of a larger parcel that works its way off to the west. And so we bought that from the St. Peter's Parish. I did speak with Father Ron there. He expressed an interest in perhaps naming the park, St. Peter's Park or St. Peter's Pickleball Park or something like that in the event that we move forward. But I wanted to share this with you and get your feedback and try to get some direction before I move forward with design, engineering, and permitting of this work. As you're probably aware, just about everything in the town of Hebron requires a special permit. So it's a fairly high bar in terms of application. A permit preparation will require a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And ideally, if we can get the ball rolling, we'd love to get this project out to bid and fingers crossed, get some shovels in ground and hopefully some concrete poured before the end of the calendar year. So that's my spiel. Anybody has any feedback?
Yeah, let's go for questions and comment from the board. Dan, you're welcome to start. I see your hand raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Go on. I do know that back during Rich Colarco's time, he had asked me to walk the field with him. Apparently, and this is above my pay grade, so to speak, the field really does not meet the distance requirements for a regulation softball field or baseball field. So
Yeah, that's correct. That's the information I've received from Craig Bryant, and I just want to apologize on his behalf. He is a ill son, so I think he's taking care of him. It's not unfamiliar. I was down for the count earlier this week as well. So, but he did express to me, I believe this is a 70-foot field, and even its orientation is not ideal for, for fielding balls or pitching or whatever. The orientation is best when you have a, east, west, north, south orientation, however that works. But yeah, so right now the way youth baseball is programmed in the town of Hebron, and I guess in the region, because we are, we have Ram Sports, right? So we collaborate with other municipalities. This is a 70-foot field, so it's either we would reduce the size to be consistent with the demands of a smaller group of 60-foot fields, or expand it to be a 90-foot field. The reality of the 90-foot field is it's not going to fit on this site. Because of some of the improvements that have been made through the years. And to reduce it to a 60-foot field, I think is the one actually we don't really need as much of, and can be used, that user group can actually function pretty well at other sites. So I believe there's a limited time of the year where this gets used for practice purposes. It's kind of like when all else is unavailable, they would turn to this. I think that's also when football picks up, in terms of its practice throughout the weekdays up at Gilead Hill. So the field up there becomes a little less available. But considering the regional nature of our youth sports, in the event that we do anticipate a need, I think we have a few solutions we can turn to. So the loss of the field, I don't think is particularly concerning.
then that's exactly where I was going with it. I think that this would probably be a far better fit for that field and a far better fit for the location. And you're already starting out with a fairly flat surface. My only question is, I see the parking spaces for that, yet we've got the town center project building at the north end of that. We also have the block structure, which is shown there. Would there be a separate drive over to there? I was just kind of curious why they decided to put the parking lot there and not over where we've also got some structures.
Yeah, so I think by putting the idea was that by putting the parking down here, it makes for the potential for use during events at the school. It leaves open the opportunity for future uses on the northerly portion. I would anticipate the need for the storage space in that block building probably to be less of a priority, and perhaps this building goes away in the future. I think it was substantially associated with the ballpark use, so it may not really have a place anymore. It is a little bit of an oddball looking structure, and if we make additional improvements, one of my things I know I've pitched to a few of you already, and I'm happy to do to anyone else I haven't chewed the ear of, there's actually a pretty nice looking stone wall along the Church Street frontage, and the tree line is pretty overgrown, but with a little bit of pruning and perhaps some restoration of that wall, I could see this park becoming even more attractive from not just from its interior and as we make improvements, but from along the street too. So I'm kind of looking forward to the opportunities that this brings to enhance, Church Street as well, not just the park. So that's, I think, part of the reason we will maintain the gravel access drive, and you can already see kind of the way the traffic is navigated over the turf historically. I would imagine that same pattern will be used to access the storage shed for the pickup and drop off of the snowfolk and the Adirondack chairs. I think that is currently it's suitable, but maybe there's a need for improvement in the future. Not part of this plan right now.
And then the other thing would be, is there any kind of, I'm sure there's going to be at least some cost for putting in the gravel or the bed for the parking area.
Yeah, I guess it depends on, we'll have to talk that through with our parks and our public works folks. They did it, if you've seen some of the improvements they made to some of our parking areas and open spaces, they'll typically use millings. I mean, in this case, we want to make sure we do a good job with the proper base. Another example is the turnaround on the bottom of Old Colchester Road. They did a nice job clearing the area and restoring that for the bus turnaround that was required there. So, we have a couple good examples of successful implementation. Yeah, if we wanted to take it up a notch, it likely would require a little bit of additional funding for appropriate surfacing. But again, in terms of the rough in, and if we were going to limit it to millings for the time being, I think we have those assets and those resources to do it.
Thank you. Dan, you're good?
Over to you, Andy.
Well, I'm done. I believe I'm in favor of moving forward. I want to start seeing some of these projects to fruition, and spring is coming and construction season is coming, and we need to start moving on some of this stuff.
Okay, thank you. Let's get some other board comments. Tiffany, anything you'd like to add? Comments?
Yeah, just one quick question. So, Matt, you'd mentioned at the beginning that, and I fully support this idea. I actually think it's much better than trying to place it next to the school where we already have tight parking as it is, particularly on election night. That traffic can get pretty dicey in that small lot. So I'm glad that we're thinking about moving it. And looking at the sheet, we've already allocated $118,000 for the pickleball courts. And you had mentioned that we would need to allocate more. I'm comfortable with our reserve funds as we have it, but do you have any idea of how much more you're going to need to get this off the ground?
I'm anticipating that engineering and survey fees likely are going to come from my or Parks and Recreation budgets, our standard engineering, set aside that we have. In terms of, so I believe the costs that Craig prepared did include fencing that would be required. I don't know that it included any landscaping. We don't have specific plans for that yet. That could be an evolution or a maturation of the project. We know that the Common CDC's housing project will be constructed to the north at 60 Church Street. That's the parcel immediately to the north of the block structure. We actually, I've been thinking of this as an asset and as a resource to complement that future housing development. But we do know that there are some concerns about the noise that pickleball can make. So we do want to be thoughtful about how to break that noise if we can. So I think some evergreen plantings and maybe a little bit of help to the buffer, the tree line to the north, just above on this sheet above the block structure is full of ash and locust. And those are really fast growing scrub trees and they're substantially shot. So that buffer in terms of its density and the ability to break noise and is not functioning the way I'd like to see it, and want to see it for the housing development. So we'll have to be thinking about that. And in my opinion, I think you start with well, this is getting off the rails a little bit, but that's when you have an opportunity to think ahead. You plan a little bit smaller because starting with larger trees often leads to their inability to kind of mature and proliferate the way they should. So, ideally, if you have the time, you plant a smaller trees to expand and succeed. I mean, to mature appropriately. So I think about those kind of things. Landscaping is going to be concerned, and then just the material cost for the parking is something neither Craig or I had really thought too much about. Our original iteration was to utilize, a shared parking situation. We don't think that's the ideal scenario now. So again, we could start with millings. This is a resource that we have access to. If we found that a more appropriate and more stable gravel or, crushed stone, something like that was appropriate, we could get some figures on that.
And I think maybe for the context of this discussion, I'm making sure I understand this, Matt, is we really are looking for a direction from the board to begin the process, the site selection approval to begin the process. I'm not really thinking that we're prepared to look at ARPA as additional funding at this juncture. Are you comfortable with that? Is the outcome?
Yeah, that's not the request. Yep, you're right. I'm looking for the direction to move forward with this location and substantially this iteration. We have other, minor modifications to this concept, but we can sort that out with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Really, we just want to make sure that you guys are comfortable moving forward with pickleball in this general location. The idea that we're displacing a ball field, that kind of past its prime at this point, and committing to pickleball park here.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and Tiffany, first thing I wrote down additional funds with a question mark. So I just want to make sure that we clarify that, at least at this juncture. Now we're clear that what the intent is that you're looking for the board from tonight. Tiffany, is there any additional comment then based on that clarification?
No, other than, I'm a tennis first person, so I do find the sport of pickleball to be quite loud. So thank you for thinking of that, because I've definitely seen articles in the New York Times about neighbors revolting against pickleball courts. So thank you for already thinking ahead.
Thank you. Claudia, comments about this, please?
Sure, just a few. Thank you, Matt, for giving this presentation, for your thoughtfulness and your preparation. Appreciate that. I guess the first thing comes to mind is I'm sure the local orthopedist is going to have some booming business in about a year when these pickleball courts open up. But I would say just top of mind, I mean, the ancillary benefits to having this pickleball court in operation is the physical fitness part of it, the community feel of it, and then just continuing enhancement of services that we can offer our citizens. So it's all, for me, it's all a win-win. So you have my full support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keith.
Yeah, and Matt and Pete, good point. I realize that this is just a preliminary thing, like nothing here is to scale, and we're not expecting, I mean, all of us have minor tweaks, just like, Matt has concerns about soundproofing to the north. We also want to make sure that we have soundproofing to the south for, the school times as well. I'm not a huge fan of getting rid of a town asset, but I have full confidence that Matt and his team have done due diligence to make sure that this is a conversion of an asset to one that will be more used by the residents. So with that in mind, I'm in favor of it. Obviously with minor tweaks, but those will be handled going forward in other meetings. But yeah, I'm in favor of this location.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments from me. I do recognize the concern of our baseball community, and also hearing from you, Matt, that we be able to make accommodations going forward with some consideration if there is a need for some other access if that's at some juncture. And so I agree with what I'm hearing from the balance of the board, which is that the greater good, I think, and all the things that were presented and considered would support moving forward with the site the way it was presented. And just for me, Matt, when I don't know if this diagram well, I'm sure you could describe it, but a parcel that was purchased by the town versus open space, were you able to articulate that based on this aerial view? Just thinking of the future use of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that can be accurately articulated, but in terms of a 50-50, this is our GIS system. I don't know if you guys can see that particularly well. But you see this this orange band that kind of bisects the property. It's running north-south here. This westerly portion is substantially unimproved. And what we know is that this parcel here, identified as 56 Church Street, is the Yaps property that will be donated to the town. If you move further westerly, we have town-owned open space associated with, I think this is actually town-owned, associated with the elementary school. There's town-owned property here. This is, open space's desire to see this band along the brook running north-south. We could expand the linear trail system here in a whole series of open space. So in terms of it being broken up 50-50, it makes sense that the idea of the open space portion being the westerly portion that is undisturbed, unimproved, and adjacent to other existing open space assets. So I don't think it was defined, but logically that is how I think it was probably intended.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you so much. Anything else from the board? Thank you very much, Matt. And Mr. Tierney, what would you need from the board at this point? Is this a motion? Is this where are we? What do you need from us?
I think what Matt original ask is we've looked at many sites for this and other things, and this is what we've finally come up with. The engineer's drawn a schematic. We looked at a lot of other places, and we just, in order to move these projects forward, we need direction from the Board of Selectmen, who has the final say, that's in charge of the monies to be expended on ARPA funds. So if the board so feels that this is the area that we should be, looking into, that'll give us the department heads and the town direction to start moving in that direction, so we can get this out to bid and get actual costs to see what we're looking at.
Yeah, I think we're in a position to move forward, but I didn't know if it was in the form of a motion or we just need a verbal. I mean, what's the official approval process that you would need to move forward within this structure of this ARPA?
I would be looking for a consensus of the board to proceed with this location to get design and get it ready to go out to RFP for bid. So if that's in the form of a motion, we'll take that.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we authorize the town to move forward with the development of the pickleball courts as outlined in the ARPA fund project at what is identified as St. Peter's Field. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you, Dan. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Keith.
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you, Claudia. I don't hope that wasn't a hard question and she panicked.
No, it looks frozen. Looks like she's.
Yeah. It is. Okay.
I had lost her entirely. Did she hang up?
Yeah, I lost her entirely as well. So what I'll do then is Peter Casper, aye as well. We do have a majority and the motion passes with the confirmation of 4. If she rejoins and wishes to have her motion, her vote for the record, there you are. She's back. So we talked about you a little bit, Claudia. So in favor, aye, or opposed, nay? How do you vote?
Oh, Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you, Claudia. Motion passes unanimously. Please move forward as outlined. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us and providing that clarification.
Thank
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Tierney, that moves us to 8B.
Okay, so I believe this is where we're going to jump to 9A. I've been shuffling.
I thought we were doing after 8B, which would be the Parks and Rec.
It was stuck together. I'm sorry. You're 100% correct. So next up is 8B, which is the Parks and Recs park policies update. And I have that in front of you. So item 8B attaches the proposed Parks and Recreation as approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission for recommendation to the Board of Selectmen at the January 23rd, 2024 meeting. Sorry. The town manager is recommending the policy be approved as presented, except for one area. I'm recommending that the proposed section 23 firearms be eliminated. And the reason I'm recommending that is in the past meetings, we had law enforcement along with the town attorney weigh in, and as the policy stands today, it falls underneath state statute. We haven't had any problems. There's no enforcement problems there. But if we were to try to change it the way the Parks has presented it, I believe it's too confusing and we still can't really enforce it. So therefore, I think it would cause, conflict. We haven't had any the way it stands now. So I'm recommending that we approve everything else they've submitted, but let's leave that one alone if the board feels the same way I do regarding that after hearing from law enforcement.
Okay, thank you. Dan, would you read the motion, please? And then we'll get to discussion.
Sure. And I can read the motion. I've also added a sentence following it, if I could add that into the motion.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Proposed resolution be it resolved by the Hebron Board of Selectmen that pursuant to the Town Code Chapter 272, Section 272-1, the Park and Open Spaces Policies, Attachment 272A, are hereby approved as amended. Then the amendment would be with the exception that Section 23 be eliminated from the policy and that the state laws become the directive for that section.
Thank you. The resolution has been read. I know we've covered this a bit in the past, but of course, welcome to hear from the board regarding items of discussion, comments on this item. Tiffany?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I don't find section 23 as confusing as some other folks do. I also find that section 23 is pretty much in alignment with a lot of what our neighbor towns do. So I'm looking at a list right now. Marlborough, Hartford, East Hartford, West Hartford, Glastonbury, they all have a similar sentence that says that on any town recreational facilities that these types of weapons cannot be used or carried or fired. We clarify that if you have a valid handgun permit that we're going to follow applicable state statutes, which I think is reasonable. So I guess I'm just not sure where the confusion comes in, because as I read section 23, we note that we're going to apply state statute in any type of circumstance. So I guess I'm not seeing why we wouldn't accept the full recommendation from Parks and Rec. So if anybody wants to weigh in on that, that's great. That's just kind of where my confusion is coming in.
Okay, so that's a good point. And maybe Andy, if maybe we go through that again, because I want everyone comfortable with what we're doing here. So, or suggesting. So if you could just maybe provide a little more context on that for what Tiffany is asked about.
So the confusion that we're alluding to would be the people visiting the different parks. Not sure which ones would allow or not allow the way it's written in that policy. There are certain ones, like whether it's be open space or certain trails versus playgrounds, parks that have equipment in it, things like that. So I think what we're trying to propose is keep it, keep it simple, stupid. Have one rule that we've had right along and enjoyed, no controversy whatsoever. It's hard to put things in place that the law enforcement's telling us they really can't enforce, regardless of what some of these other towns have. I agree with what Tiffany says, and I was privy to those lists as well. But Mark Rivera spoke to this when he was a selectman. I've had the resident trooper weigh in on it, and we had the town attorney weigh in on it. So however the board wants to move forward, I think this item's been on the agenda for a while, but my recommendation is to, as stated in the packet, to just keep it status quo for now. We haven't had any problems, but that's final decision lies with the board.
Okay. Tiffany, any other, I don't want to move beyond your comments if you want to follow up with anything based on that.
No, I think I'd like to hear from some newer board members. With respect, Mark Rivera is not on the board anymore, and we have 2 new members that I think it would be helpful to hear from. Again, I don't find section 23 to be confusing, and maybe I'm not looking at it with the correct lens. But I personally don't have a problem with section 23, and I guess I don't see the imperative to take it out. Thanks.
Thank you. Claudia?
Sure. So I would have to echo Tiffany's sentiments. I personally, I don't see any ambiguity or on this particular section. I think as far as the town sort of being sort of in step with addressing, concerns of the issues of our society these days, having the language here, honestly, it probably helps families feel safe around town. Now, as far as law enforcement saying they wouldn't be able to enforce it, I can't really speak to that because I'm not a law enforcement officer. And I haven't talked to law enforcement officers about this particular section. But also to Tiffany's point, the fact that this language does exist in other towns, that gives me comfort as well. So personally, I'm okay with leaving section 23 as it stands,
Okay, thank you.
as it's proposed.
Yeah, thank you. Keith?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of gonna have to side with Tiffany on this one of leaving 23 in. I've heard some of the arguments when the previous Board of Selectmen, with Mark and Gail still on, and I kind of get where they're coming from, but I feel that this needs to be in there. If the hang up is with firearms, is with pistol permits and state legality surrounding that, then I don't have any problem with striking the word firearms from 23A. But the fact of the matter is that it covers a lot more than just pistols. I mean, this covers air and gas powered guns like paintball guns. It covers crossbows and bows, which have really no reason to be in a recreational area. And I don't understand the hang up on the police not being able, or the constables not being able to take action, because if you look at section 4 of this same document, it says that the town reserves the right to expel any person from any park at any time for any reason. So if they can enforce this and that, or they can enforce neither. So I kind of have a problem with the back and forth language on that. I would be open to striking firearms from 23A, that's fine. But we've seen recent vandalism at some of our town parks with, motor vehicles leaving large ruts that we have to fix. But we're going to strike this here so that we don't have any recourse through fines or anything else against somebody bringing a paintball gun and shooting up, Veterans Park with a paintball gun. I don't know. I am for leaving it in.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Any additional discussion? Okay, the motion, the resolution has been read. All those in favor? Thank you for
I'm
time.
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Can you
go
please
ahead.
clarify what the resolution is? Because I think Dan, you had added I'd like it
correct.
read again for the record so
sure.
we know
I'm
what we're
sorry.
voting on.
Sorry, I didn't see. Absolutely. Dan, if you wanted to read the resolution again with your amendment.
Well, I'll read it with the amendment. Okay. Be it resolved that the Hebron Board of Selectmen that
Why?
Can everyone, if you're not speaking, please mute?
be it resolved by the Hebron Board of Selectmen that pursuant to the Town Code Chapter 272, Section 272-1, the Park and Open Spaces Policies, Attachment 272A, are hereby amended and approved as as amended, which I added the amendment, with the exception that Section 23 be eliminated from the policy and that state laws become the directive for that section. That was what was read as the resolution. So what you would do is vote that either up or down. If you voted down, then we could reread the resolution, and instead of as amended or amended, do as presented.
Tiffany, you comfortable with that clarification? That in
Yeah,
terms of-
I think Dan's right. I think we have to vote on his original resolution. People vote up or down, and then we follow up with another one. So I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. All right. So based on the resolution as read by Mr. Larson, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye, opposed, nay, or abstentions. Please note that as well. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, no.
Keith?
Keith Pettit, nay.
Claudia?
Claudia Riley, no.
Okay. Peter Casper, aye. Motion, resolution does not pass at a vote of 3-2 nay. So thank you very much. And so now you're suggesting then we
I will
Dan-
reread the
Okay.
resolution,
Okay.
but instead of amended would be as presented. So
Okay.
be it resolved by the Hebron Board of Selectmen that pursuant to Town Code Chapter 272, Section 272-1, the Park and Open Spaces Policies, Attachment 272A, are hereby approved as presented.
Thank you. Resolution has been read. Any additional discussion? I know we just covered it, but any additional discussion?
I'd like to make an amendment.
Yes, please. Go ahead, Keith.
I would amend that we strike the words firearms of any kind from section 23A.
Okay. Now, in terms
That
of
way it will read, no person shall use, carry, or possess or have air or gas powered guns, crossbows or bows, or other missile throwing devices at any town recreational facilities.
so same thing there, just to make sure I get this right. So would we move forward with the amendment, or do you want to, should we take this sort of one chunk at a time?
You'd vote on the amendment, and then if the amendment fails, you would vote on the motion without the amendment.
Okay. All right, so the amendment's been read. Is there any additional discussion on that? Dan, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Get rid of the hand. What would be the purpose of removing firearms of any kind?
Because then firearms would roll up to state statute, being not mentioned at the town level.
Love that.
What's that, Claudia? I didn't hear that. Did you want to add something? Or is
So
that
what-
Claudia?
I guess I'm gonna ask Keith the question. So when you say it rolls up to state statute, do you have any language on that? Like, what is the state statute? Is it
The
saying
state statute is that it's concealed carry. There are certain areas that are restricted according to state statute, like schools, federal buildings, state buildings, that kind of thing. But town recreational facilities would not fall under that.
And so under state statute, concealed carry is allowed in parks?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for that. So we have a proposed resolution with an amendment. We will then move forward to vote on that.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
before we go,
Go ahead. Yeah, sure. Sorry.
would that then be what would be termed a friendly amendment? And would that then, instead of as presented, we would have to go back to as amended?
I believe if we all vote in favor of the amendment, both pass. So it would be your motion with the amendment. So it would be as presented, but with just those 4 words stricken.
Okay. Okay. I would suggest that I read it then with the friendly amendment that be it resolved, the Hebron Board of Selectmen that pursuant to the Town Code, Chapter 272, Section 272-1, the Park and Open Spaces Policies, Attachment 272A, are hereby amended and approved, the amendment being the striking of in Section 23, carry or possess firearms. Is that correct?
Firearms of any kind.
Of any kind.
It'll still say use, carry, or possess air or gas powered guns, crossbows, yada yada. We're just taking out the part about firearms.
Okay.
Getting comfortable because I've started inappropriately twice.
I'm just not sure I completely understand, but it's fine.
Okay. I don't want to rush you. If you want more discussion on it, Dan, I'm not trying to rush.
I'm just trying to get my head around it. That's okay.
Okay. Well, I'll give you another second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye, opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain. Claudia.
Claudia Riley, aye.
Keith.
Keith Pettit, aye.
Tiffany.
Tiffany Teely, aye.
I gave you another 30 seconds. Dan.
Dan Larson, aye.
Okay, and Peter Casper votes nay. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you for the discussion and the amendment. Okay. Now, thank you for your patience, Chief. I think, Mr. Tierney, we're moving now to 9A under new business as per the earlier schedule adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you're correct, 9A is approved the Connecticut Water Firefighter Support Grant application. Connecticut Water is offering a grant for fire departments. Again, this year, the town applied for and was awarded a grant last year for water delivery appliances and equipment. Last year, we asked for 2 large diameter hydrant gates and would like to ask again this year for 2 more. Copies of the grant application and quotes for the gates are attached, and there's a proposed motion. And we have our more than capable, able Fire Chief Peter Starkell here for questions if needed.
Okay. Not to pick on you, Mr. Larson, but when I think of firefighter support, I think of you. If you have 9A available, would you please read the motion?
Sure. Move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the application to Connecticut Water's Firefighter Support Grant Program in the amount of $1,500 for the acquisition of 2 large diameter hydrant gates, and authorize Andrew J. Tierney, Town Manager, to sign any necessary documents to apply for, accept, and receive such grant if awarded.
Hey, thank you very much for that motion. Discussion.
I'm just curious of where you are proposing that these units would be placed.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So we were lucky enough to get 2 of these hydrant gates last year. We placed one on our pumper here in headquarters and a second at Company 2 down on Church Street. These 2 new ones, if we're lucky enough to get the grant, one would go to the pumper that's located at Company 3 on North Street, and the 4th one would go into the ladder truck that's here at headquarters.
I'm sorry, I should have asked another question first.
Sure.
You want to explain to them exactly what these gates are and what their purpose is?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
So these gates, no, good question. These gates are for our pressurized hydrant system that we have here in the center of town. And what they do is they allow us to tie our hose lines into the hydrants, and we can control the water flow right from that appliance, right from that gate, without having to shut the entire fire hydrant down. We currently don't have, well, I shouldn't say that. We have 2 that we were awarded last year, but we want, for consistency, want to outfit each of our pumpers with one of these.
Now you'd be able to control the flow of water. I'm going to ask a question. I know the answer. Why can't you just cut back on the or throttle the hydrant back?
So if we're tied into a pressurized hydrant and we want to add another line or do something different or shut a line down, right now we physically have to shut the entire fire hydrant down, which shuts down all of the water sources. So we can have up to 3 lines coming off of a hydrant supplying 3 different sources. So what the gate does is it allows us to shut down just that one particular line, not the entire fire hydrant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Any other discussion? Okay. Hearing no other discussion, I'll move forward to vote on the proposed motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you, Dan. Tiffany?
Tiffany Taylor, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Keith?
Keith Bennett, aye.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you. Peter Casper, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That moves us to Mr. Tierney to item 9B.
9B, yes, I'm back. I'm having trouble with my computer. For some reason, charging, even though it's plugged into the charger, it's rapidly decreasing. So I don't know what that's about, but I'm going to hang in there as best I can. 9B, approve Hero Fund USA grant application for fire department. The Hero Fund USA is offering a 50-50 matching grant for fire departments for the purchase of equipment. The fire department would like to apply for assistance in purchasing 4 thermal imaging cameras for the officer seating positions in the fire apparatus. A couple of the grant applications and quotes for the cameras are attached. The total project cost is $4,000 with a $2,000 from the grant and $2,000 to come from the fire department's approved operating budget. And then there's a proposed motion.
Thank you. Tiffany, would you be kind enough to read the motion, please?
Can you just give me a minute because I'm eating dinner?
I can't see you on my screen, so you know what? I'll save you for later. Go ahead, Dan.
All right.
Go ahead. Yeah, I didn't see you.
Move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the application to Hero Fund USA in the amount of $2,000 for the acquisition of 4 thermal imaging cameras and authorize Andrew J. Tierney, Town Manager, to sign any necessary documents to apply for, accept, and receive such grant if awarded.
Thank you very much. Discussion. Anyone on the board wish to fire a difficult question at the chief?
Oh yeah, I'll trick him with this one.
He looks nervous. Go ahead, Dan. See if you can trip him up.
I'm ready, Dan.
You want to explain exactly what the thermal imaging cameras are and how they function and how they help on a fire scene?
Yeah. So I knew you were going to ask me that question. So thermal imaging cameras, what they do is they allow us to see in a reduced or zero visibility atmosphere. So what they do is they pick up heat signatures from a heating appliance, from a hidden fire in a wall, from a person, from an animal. So what they do is they allow us to do kind of, it's called a guided search. So we can use one of these in a reduced or zero visibility atmosphere, and we can see things that we normally wouldn't be able to see in a nutshell. So again, they pick up on heat signatures from appliances, heating devices, people, animals, etc. And what these would do, these would be mounted right to our air packs in each of our, again, the 4 fire apparatus that we have, the pumping apparatus. So the officer who typically rides in the front seat on the passenger side, they would have that attached right to their air pack. Did I miss anything?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
You passed the test. You're all right, Chief. You're doing all right. I'm glad you're
All right. All right.
Good. Thank you for that clarification, though. Anyone else on the board wish to comment or ask questions of the chief?
I just have a quick comment. Chiefs, I don't know if you know, but my father was the fireman for 30 years for the city of Hartford. He was a professional fireman starting in the late 70s. And I'm sure his mind would be pretty blown at the technology that's available to the firefighters of these days. So, you know, thank you for this and continuing to improve all the equipment that we have for the fire department for our town. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I have a mentor who served about the same time probably as your dad, and he retired and he moved to Vermont, and they made him the fire chief as soon as he arrived. So a lot of great folks came out of Hartford.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Okay, seeing no additional discussion is warranted, we'll move ahead to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye, opposed nay, or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia Riley, aye.
Peter Casper, aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Chief, so much for your clarification and your patience.
Sure, thank you. And just as an FYI, I'll be back for your next meeting. I'll be sending some information into Donna. The Federal Assistance to Firefighter Grant period opened, and it runs through March 8th. So I'd like to apply, and again, I'll send the details so we can discuss it at the next meeting, but I'd like to apply for a federal grant for fire apparatus, as well as what's called a micro grant for a new stretcher and some lifting equipment for the ambulance. So a lot of great grant opportunities that are coming up soon. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Mr. Tierney? You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Having trouble with my computer today. I don't know why, but
Line-
approve
line-
agreement between the town of Hebron and the Connecticut River Valley Chamber of Commerce attaches a memo from Matthew Bardot, town planner and Economic Development Commission, recommending that the town of Hebron join the Connecticut River Valley Chamber of Commerce. Also attached is a proposed agreement which has been reviewed by the town attorney. The annual membership for 2023-24 will be $2,025, which will be funded through the approved EDC budget. And like I said, we have Matt, the town planner, if he wants to speak on that. Matthew?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Once again, it's Matt Bordeaux, town planner. I'm hoping that the material in your packet speaks for itself, but as you know, Economic Development Commission recently adopted their new marketing plan and is looking for some support services from the Connecticut River Valley Chamber. After a review of the available options and considering some of our past experiences in the world of economic development, consultation or services, we'd like to become a member of the Connecticut River Valley Chamber. We think that considering the region and the services they offer, this is a good opportunity for economic development to kind of ramp up their goals of better communicating with the existing business community, as well as the opportunity to kind of implement a marketing plan and engage in a little bit of recruiting, appropriately for Hebron. And based on our communication with this Chamber of Commerce, I think this is the right group for the time. And they also have some experience and some services related to conducting events or administering events, which is something that I think the town could benefit from as well. So considering the the financial the fee proposal, and basically I'm recommending that we move forward with this agreement. We're kind of eager to get the ball rolling. We certainly want to kind of enhance your online presence, make sure that we have an appropriate and routinely monitored and maintained inventory of our existing businesses so we can better communicate with them. Things along those lines, I think, is really what we think this relationship could bring to the town and benefit the EDC and town as well. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to help you out.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Keith if you would be so kind as to read the motion, then we'll move to any discussion. And so thank you for that clarification. But let's get the motion forward, and then we'll open it up for additional board discussion. Keith?
I move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen authorize Andrew J. Tierney, Town Manager, to enter into the membership agreement between the Connecticut River Valley Connecticut Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Town of Hebron, Connecticut. That motion is written wrong. I apologize.
Right. So please amend the motion.
Yeah, let's scratch that motion. Move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen authorize Andrew J. Tierney, Town Manager, to enter into the membership agreement between the Connecticut River Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Town of Hebron, Connecticut.
Okay, thank you for that catch and that amendment. So the motion has been read. Additional discussion from the board. Claudia?
We could have randomly voted to join some random chamber of commerce. So thank you for catching that, Keith. I've heard some feedback from some town members, also members of the Town Center Project. They're very enthusiastic about this proposal, as am I. That's it.
Thank you. Keith?
Yeah, I'm very much in favor as well. Glastonbury and Marlborough are towns that are very similar to ours, and it'll be good to be working on economic development alongside those towns.
Thank you. Tiffany, any comments, questions for Matt?
No, just that I support this as well. I think it's a smart move. I think that anything we can do to build our presence in the business community outside of obviously our local community is a good thing. And I think that there are best practices that can be learned by, surrounding towns. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, anything from Matt?
I agree with moving forward with this. My only question is now, would we still maintain membership with the Wyndham Chamber of Commerce, or would we be severing that relationship?
I believe that relationship has already been severed. So yeah, the intent is to pivot from that relationship and move to this one instead.
Oh, I didn't know that we had done that. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move to a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye, opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Tiffany Taylor, aye.
Thank you. Claudia?
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you, Keith. Peter Casper votes aye. The proposed motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Matt, for that additional clarification. I appreciate it. I turn it back to our esteemed town manager as we continue on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm in the right spot. Are we doing item 9? Is it 9D that's next?
9C.
No, that was 9C. So we've done A, B, and C. So 9D is housing choices, and 9E would be the conservation easement.
That's what I have. I have Housing Choices Advisory Committee attached as a member from Matt Bordeaux, Town Planner, with a recommendation on the appointments of the Housing Choices Advisory Committee recently created by adoption of an ordinance. The item will be continued onto the next agenda for action and appointment at the February 15th, 2024 Board of Selectmen meeting. So once again, this is a first glance. We want to get it in front of you. Matt just used the criteria that people he's been dealing with, so nothing here is carved in stone. We want to get it in front of you guys to discuss, ponder, and come back at the next meeting. I'll turn it over to Mr. Chair and Matt if they have questions.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. I'll just to try to give a brief summary. So, the Hebron Plan for Housing Choices adopted, I think it was 2002, recommend the establishment of a Housing Choices Advisory Committee. This would be an evolution, in my mind, of the working group that was put together to establish and write the the Housing Choices Plan. Again, that is a 5-year plan, needs to be updated by state statute. So to have a group like this working to kind of consider the strengths and weaknesses of the plan and be prepared to make amendments, I think is an important part of what they can do. I also think this committee will have the opportunity to help inform and perhaps advocate for housing choices when it comes to potential projects and regulation amendments that the Planning and Zoning Commission may be considering in the near term, or in the not too distant future. So the ordinance did specify that we would seek to have one member with experience in real estate and housing, one member with social services field, and one member with planning and land use experience. I also thought it appropriate to carry over some of the existing members of the working group. The two previous members of that working group were Lillian Rhodes and Florence O'Sullivan, who I've recommended. Mr. Stephen Wells is a former engineer, community member at large, also a member of our, a retired community. Pamela Atwood is a business owner and owns Atwood Dementia Group. So that kind of covers our social services field. Jim Cilio, of course, notable realtor in town, great experience, knowledge. Scott Kaufman, I chose him, or I'm recommending him in part for his presence in the Colebrook community, but also as a member of the Economic Development Commission, who can speak to the role of housing and economic development. And then my thought was, not that I don't have other folks to put forward, but that if we leave a vacancy in an alternate position for the time being, we can learn a little bit more about what the strengths and weaknesses of this group are and come back to you, with the basically looking for your guidance, or perhaps we, reach out specifically to someone that can kind of fill a void if that becomes appropriate or necessary. Again, this is an advisory committee, so, regular members and alternates is not really a big deal. I don't anticipate there be a great deal of significant decision making coming out of this group, but rather it could be an advocacy group, educational, and then of course a group that will help to guide our update to our plan when it's necessary. So I just want to put that in front of you, a little summary, a little background, a couple of folks, you probably know most of them. So just a recommendation for now.
Okay, thank you. So obviously this is not a motion, that it will be on the next agenda, but is there anything that the board wishes to ask Matt regarding sort of the material here, or just to make sure that we're best prepared for the February 15th meeting? Good. Tiffany, I see. Claudia, okay for now, or do you need some additional comments or clarification from Matt?
I'm fine for now. Thank you.
Okay. Keith? Good. Dan?
No, it looks good. I think all these people will do very good in their positions. I did read here somewhere that Florence is talking about taking as one of the alternate positions. But I'm basically happy with everybody you have listed. I'm wondering if we could almost move forward tonight if you so desired.
I think we'll leave it on the agenda for the 15th, simply because the motion's not prepared. and others might want a little more time to dig in, because obviously, Dan, you know some of these folks maybe more than some others. So I'm fine leaving on the 15th. And I appreciate, Matt, as you always prepare and provide a very concise yet thorough explanation of whatever topic that you've been brought before the board to comment on. So thank you for that work, and we'll keep that in our notes and be prepared to move to address a motion at the next meeting. So thank you very much,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Tierney. So we're going to move on to, then are we going to 9E? I think before we go back to old business, did I have that right, Andy? You're on mute still.
I apologize for that. Again,
Yep.
I got my computer fixed though. Accept conservation easement at 46-8A North Street. And I'll look to the town planner to give us a little update on that.
Okay, great.
Good.
Matt?
Thanks again, Andy and Mr. Chair. Nothing particularly exciting here. There is a what I'll call a flag lot, for lack of a better term, that exists on the west side of North Street. It's identified as parcel 46-8A. Thank you, Donna, for bringing up the map. There is an easement, access easement between two existing homes that provides access. You probably have driven by and seen the sign out along the frontage, lot for sale. The owner is preparing, or has prepared, a site development plan for a single family home. And associated with that are some necessary improvements to the access drive. There's what exists essentially is a gravel kind of wooded drive, or what's a better term for that? A farm road, essentially, with gravel at this time, but the public improvement standards require that when there are driveways with slopes that exceed a certain pitch, portions of them need to be paved and improved. So there was a wetlands permit that's required associated with some of that improvement, and as the Conservation Commission considered that wetlands permit, they took into consideration the proximity of two existing bodies of water. To the south is a pond that you see when you drive by, looking west toward Tallwood Country Club, and to the north of the drive is a wetland area. So after kind of working this through with the applicant, Conservation Commission is recommended to the Planning and Zoning Commission that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Board of Selectmen the adoption of a conservation easement that would essentially provide a buffer between the access drive and these regulated resources. So that's really all this is doing, is providing an unimproved, undisturbed buffer between the regulated resources to the north and south of the drive and the driveway itself that will provide access to a future single-family home.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I'll ask someone please to read the proposed motion, and then we'll entertain discussion. Tiffany, can I pick on you now?
You can pick on me now. Thank you. Move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen accept the conservation easement as depicted on the plans entitled Property Survey, Property of North 91 LLC, North Street, Hebron, Connecticut, prepared by Gardner and Peterson Associates LLC, 178 Hartford Turnpike, Tolland, Connecticut, dated 09/08/2023, revised 11/21/2023.
Thank you for reading the proposed motion. Any additional discussions or questions for Matt? Dan?
I'm sorry. Utilities, would they be going up the middle of the driveway, or is there space on the edge of the driveway for utilities to go from the street into the site, or how does that work?
So this site will be served by private well and private septic system. I believe, and I don't have that information in front of me, but I believe that because of the proximity to Tallwood Country Club, this is actually land that is being carved off of that property holding, I think there was a clubhouse, not a clubhouse, but a maintenance building to the west of the proposed house site, from which power may be accessible. I think that is how that's going to work. If there's more information, I'd be happy to provide it.
I'm just, I'm just curious, because sometimes the easement gets pretty tight, and I'm assuming it's either going to be poles or potentially underground utilities to feed.
Yeah,
this.
the way these conservation easements are drafted, pretty much our standard, that in the event there's a need to make improvements within the conservation easement, they do have the ability to request that those improvements or that permission to make those improvements from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So there is an outlet in the need, or in the event there's a need for those kind of improvements.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Anything additional from Matt? Okay, thank you. The motion's been read. Discussion, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, aye. Please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain, please note that. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Keith?
Keith Bennett, aye.
Keith, Claudia?
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you, Peter Casper. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you again, Matt, for joining us. Appreciate it very much. Okay, so this is a quiz for you, Mr. Tierney.
Mike's on item 9F. Approve.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we going back to 8C? Old business?
Yes, Department of Public Works update.
Just trying to keep it all in line here. So, so the action committee. So that's me. So we meet. Thank you, Ms. Jenny. So we meet tomorrow, Monday. Andy continues to do a terrific job working with Eversource to understand what our options there and inform us as to whether or not that's potentially that land is potentially able to be purchased. We talked about that, and he's making great progress there. So we'll be meeting Monday and continuing to work with the town manager's office on that. So we'll have an update coming soon. I mentioned last time River East. We're still finalizing our communication plan, and that we'll probably have a little more detail tomorrow in terms of next steps. And the updates to give to the town to house on the website. So the town, Donna has made changes to the website to allow us to use the website as a current site, which will retain the previous information from the survey committee and push down, so to speak. And then the new information that is coming forward, we'll have some recommendations for the town manager's office, and we look to be populating that very shortly, at which then we'll update, obviously, the board in terms of probably by the next meeting with an update there. And that's really it, Andy, unless you want to add anything. I sort of
Nope.
figured, okay, you're good. All right, so thank you so much. Unless there's questions, that's the update from that. Good, okay, thank you. And then D is there's no update, no need to discuss that. And so Andy, I guess that moves us to 8E.
8E is a Charter Vision Commission update. Attaches a draft Charter Vision Commission charge, which should be reviewed by the board. To date, 12 people have expressed interest in being appointed to the Charter Revision Commission. They have all been contacted with a request to confirm if they wish to continue to be considered and to provide a brief bio. And then you have a list of the confirmed in front of you. And then there's,
Go, I'm sorry.
no, let's go ahead. Then there's a section about commission appointments.
And then we'll be looking to make.
Donna here, I'll just add that Mary Ann Foote has confirmed that she does want to be considered. So her name is still in there.
I think we have one more day to allow for anyone else to come forward, and then that'll put us in a position to move forward with the composition of this commission scheduled for our next meeting. So unless anybody has any questions, it really is just assessing this and being prepared to take some action on the February 15th meeting. Everyone sort of good where we stand on this? Good, okay. All right, thank you. Andy?
Okay, I think this one's for you, item 8F, right?
So, yeah, so the town manager evaluation, I put forward, working with Andy and drawing upon some experience that I had, as well as some recommendations. The charge here is to try to create a structure that we can use going forward that helps us to address the operational effectiveness of the town manager, set some goals, put some measurable items in there. So I've created at least a template, as I mentioned last meeting, for discussion. This is just to get us sort of hopefully started in the right direction. But the concept, just to refresh the memory, was to create a section that really aligned with what we should expect our residents to assume an effective town manager would be able to accomplish relative to operational effectiveness, and then a rating scale, which is not something that most of us haven't already seen, but an idea to at least put some scores to these categories associated with, thank you for pulling that up, financial management, town services. Just to, if you can scroll down quickly, we'll sort of get through the basic topics, then we'll go back. Special projects and initiatives, obviously ARPA is a great example of that, that the board brings before the town manager to execute. And we have staff management. Obviously, a town doesn't run with one person. So effective staff management, leadership qualities, as well as communication. Again, thinking and hearing in the past and being part of this is, if we don't have effective internal and external communications, there's too many constituents involved in effective town management not to have effective communication. So I put that in as a category. And then what is ultimately open at this juncture, and we don't have to act on any of this tonight, but I just wanted to get is also some goals. You have strategic goals for the town. And then what I didn't have here, there's obviously personal goals for the individual in the role, but there's also strategic goals where we can provide direction and prioritization from the board's perspective as to what we expect the town manager to look to achieve strategically for the town going, for that next, evaluation period. So so the measurables, one of the things that, by doing it this way, we don't really have measurables for the past, because that wouldn't necessarily be fair. So it's just an opportunity to level set and start fresh. The categories still can be voted on, but can't really create a measurable looking in the rearview mirror. We have new board members. So I'm trying to establish a structure that we can utilize going forward, and also utilize it this year as well to the best that we can. So that's what's here. I know you had that in preparation for the meeting. So I'm interested in obviously specific feedback. First, maybe, is this an approach that you are comfortable with? And then then I'm open to feedback. And if it looks like we're going to get into a lot of particulars with the or questions with specific items, we can have individual meetings on that. So it's not a meeting, but whatever the pleasure of the board is here. But I wanted to at least bring this forward for consideration and discussion. And we do have to actually do a review for him. At least the goal will be the month of February. So with that, I'll start. Tiffany, I see you first.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Because I was involved in this process last year alongside Gail, and I really appreciate this document. I think it provides, uniformity, right, from year to year, where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I guess my only question would be, and I don't know if this has been thought through or not, but I do know that in the past, Gail had usually collected feedback and evaluation forms from town department heads. Is that still a part of this? Do you envision this form being used for town department heads as well? Or is there a different format that we're using to gain feedback from people that are working in the town? Because I do think that that's an important part of the process.
It's a good point. And in total transparency, I did not consider that. So that's a great point. And I didn't think of using, or I didn't think of how do we then solicit the feedback. So if we want to use the same format, I think there's some sense there. And then, so I think it's a great point. So thank you for bringing it up. I hadn't considered that. So do you envision with this structure So you would envision Tiffany modifying this or doing a more generic, a different format for feedback.
I think, I think you could probably use some of the similar items in here. I certainly think communications would be a valuable thing for town department heads to evaluate. But more so, I think that those evaluations, if I recall correctly from when I saw when Gail was doing it, kind of spoke to, management style, openness to question, like some of those very specific questions that you and I both know would be asked of subordinates reporting to someone. So I do think that this structure could stay even if the numbers change. Like instead of financial management, maybe what goes in there is interpersonal relationships with subordinates and something like that. I defer to you because you've probably done more reviews than I have, but just thinking that is important data for us to have before we finalize the evaluation.
Okay. So it's staff feedback structure. So, okay, that's great. That's really good feedback. Again, I hadn't incorporated that into what I had done here. So thank you for bringing that up. Claudia?
Thank you, Peter, for bringing this important topic up. There's two things that I would just like the Board of Selectmen to consider as far as having a document that's a holistic view of the past year and then looking forward the year ahead. Would there be an opportunity for Andy to sort of do a self-assessment in addition to the board assessing him, number one? Because that typically you will see that portion from an employee when there is a formal annual review of an employee. And then my second part is at the end of the document, would there be an opportunity for maybe Andy to demonstrate or us to demonstrate to Andy opportunities for, say, skill building or professional development? Or because as a board, I feel like we should be very intentional about supporting Andy in his professional development and his acquisition of skills to make him, a more efficient leader, manager, etc. What the investment that we make in him as a town manager, it's also good for the town as well. So I don't know if we have like a budget for him for professional development opportunities or something that he self-selects. I'm not sure, but something to think about, towards the end of the document.
I think it's a good point. I think, and I've definitely seen it where there's an opportunity for personal development, and we clearly can add that. And I don't think anyone would disagree that that's not a good section, how we fund it and how it all works. I think we don't have to necessarily solve for that today, but having a personal development section, I think is great. And so you have your strategic objectives, which, from the view of the town, okay, what's he trying to accomplish for the town? But then also, how are we supporting him, as you mentioned? So I think that's a good add. In terms of self-assessment, absolutely. I think having Andy be part of this, like if you look at, unfortunately, I had some suggestions here, but the measurables, I want Andy to work with us to come up with the measurables. What do you think are reasonable targets? The board obviously has to approve it, but when we, look at financial measurements, like as an example, I have a couple of examples that I've used where we want it to be attainable, but we need it to be measurable. So if we're saying to Andy, as an example, in the first one, in financial management, we want to adhere to a target of 15% for the unassigned fund balance. That allows him to appropriately manage to the financial director saying, hey, you've got to work with the board. We've got to make sure that we address this. And so I think two things. One, we work with Andy to come up with reasonable, measurable objectives, because he should feel like he has a voice and that he knows what they are and that he can work with us. And obviously the board would have to approve those for the objectives going forward, and that he has a chance to, looking at each category, to provide us feedback, because it is very helpful. I've been part of these reviews, for a long time in the corporate world, and the managers, that he or she doesn't always have a full understanding of what you did. And depending on the scope of that management, if you're managing 200, 300 people, and then you have 12 managers who then, it's very difficult. So it's very helpful to be reminded of accomplishments and an opportunity to highlight some things that were done to allow us to view him in totality, not just from, one perspective, our own, but also in the totality of the job. So I would strongly support that as well, Claudia, that this is a mutual process where there shouldn't be surprises is what we're trying to do both ways. And if he gets a bad score on something, as an example, not he, but the person in this job, it really shouldn't be a surprise. And I've been in reviews where there's been surprises, and there should never be surprises. But if we're all working on the same document and he's got a voice in that process, or the town manager has a voice in that process, it yields a better outcome for the town and for the individual in the role. So I would agree, unless somebody disagrees, that a self-assessment and him being part of this process is something that I would strongly support. And the personal development, and then I've got the takeaway of and maybe Tiffany, I'll even ask you to comment outside of the meeting. Maybe you could help me a little bit with the staff development document to make sure that we bring that forward. Andy?
So I totally agree with everything that's said, including Tiffany. I'm going to give a suggestion. You can take it or leave it. But in this present review document here, what we did, if I use this in a couple different scenarios, but to fulfill what Tiffany brought up is we had 2 people on the board of commission that I run do interviews with department heads, whether it be phone interviews or in-person interview, with set questions with a score, or just generic, what can he do better? How's his communication? How's his interaction? If that's something the board wants, and you can, if you agree to that, that would probably be easier than putting a document out to the department. It's not that I'm opposed to that, but in the past we've done that, and it's tough to get those people to fill those out and get those back in a timely fashion.
So again, and so make sure I didn't miss. So who is having the conversation?
Whoever you decide on the board of selectmen.
On the board. Okay, I got you.
People to do interviews, pick certain department heads you feel would be pertinent.
Okay.
And just do a in-person or a phone interview, whatever works. And it's just a suggestion. That's what we did to fulfill Tiffany's obligation on this application when I use it in another area.
Okay. Okay. I think that's, as long as we get the information in a timely manner and it's consistent and it comes from the board soliciting that information, I don't have any issues with that approach. If you feel in the past that is more effective, as long as we're getting the information and it's coming to us from us, I mean, in terms of the boards doing the interviewing, then we'll get an unfiltered response to those questions, and there'll be consistency with the interpretation of those questions, so I don't have a problem with the delivery of that if you think that's more effective, because it does, unless Tiffany, you disagree, because you brought it up. So you disagree with that approach?
I seem to recall that Gail definitely documents from department heads that filled out a particular score. So while I agree, Andy, that I think that one-on-one interaction is helpful, because I think people tend to kind of speak more freely, right, when they're not writing something down, because that requires a different level of effort. I do want to reiterate that I think it's critical that we have some type of written backup to these conversations, that there are heavy notes that are being taken so that the board can have a full picture, because I think the board requires a document to look at, rather than just anecdotally, these were the conversations we had. And I think that context is important, but I still think there's value in having something down on paper. So maybe there's like a happy compromise we can reach between the two, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So, and we'll work on the documents so we have something, and then we'll get back to Andy to get his reaction on that. Tiffany, if I can work with you on that, and then we'll keep that discussion going. And Keith, where are you at in this approach so far?
Yeah, I mean, people have already covered some really good things here. I do these all the time at the state because we're all about performance evaluations. And I completely agree with you, Peter. Your end of year performance evaluation should never come as a surprise to anybody in the room. With that being said, one of the things that we do to ensure that that doesn't happen is we also make sure that it's a semi-annual event. So not the entire process, but we do a very abbreviated process at the 6-month mark, so that the person has a chance to correct anything that they're on a trajectory to not meet their goal. I think that's beneficial not just to, the person being evaluated, but it also helps the people evaluating, because what we tend to see on some areas that are done on just an annual basis is they only think about the last couple of months. They don't think about the entire year. And so some of the things, good and bad, that were done earlier on may not be weighted the same as things that just happened 2 weeks ago. By doing a semi-annual, it helps to lock those things in. I 100% agree with your comments regarding attainable goals and getting input from Andy. This needs to be a collaboration so that we're setting things that are attainable. With that in mind, I'm kind of wondering if we could slightly modify the structure here underneath each section to have strategic and tactical goals. Because obviously, like your goal of getting the unassigned fund balance between 12 and 15%, I think that's a little unattainable at this point because it's so far outside that range. And that is not something that can be done in just a few months. That is a strategic goal, but maybe after talking with Andy, he says, look, I could probably bring it down a couple of percent this year and a couple of percent next year, and then we're in the green zone. So that would be a more, tactical goal attainable within that year. I also would kind of like to see, I understand what you're doing, putting on the end the 2024 goals, but having a section 4 special projects and initiatives, I'm wondering if there's some way for us to kind of merge things together a little bit. I do like, the fact that we're specifically calling things out, but I'm wondering if we should be doing that under the header that is most affiliated with that project, maybe, or putting it here under section 4. I really like the grading scale that you have, the ability to get comments. I agree with everybody. I also think that Andy's, he has a point about the interviews with town staff, because as much as I hate to say it, I believe that all of this is going to be foiable. We'll have to check with the town attorney on that, but usually that's the way it is. And I don't necessarily know if department heads know that their documents or their comments are foiable, I don't know that they'll be 100% forthcoming in that environment. So I personally would prefer the ability to be able to get unbiased comments. And again, I am 100% for transparency. That is my full-time job at the state. And I want to make sure that this process is as transparent as possible. But I also realize the juxtaposition between transparency and FOIA, and people who work for somebody that their comment is going to be remembered when their evaluation comes up, So we need to walk a very tight line there. Other than that, I think this that you came up with is fantastic. Thank you.
Well, and again, I appreciate Andy's feedback because, again, I've done this before and had similar structures, and he provided me some significant documentation as well to help me think about it from a municipal perspective. So thanks to Andy for your help as we're moving forward. Keith, would you, not to be the teacher here, but would you mind taking the document and making those tweaks that you recommended the document, rather than in terms of your, putting the strategic and tactical pieces, and then, I just want to make sure I don't lose the spirit of how you are envisioning this. Would you mind taking this Word doc and just sort of, and then maybe making adjustments to say this is what you envisioned the structure looking like? And obviously, if you don't mind, just so that way I don't lose anything. And then you say,
I can definitely make some tweaks in line with my comments and email it back to the board and the town manager. And then, next meeting or however we want to do it, we can discuss merging pieces that we may like or not like from that version with this version, or
okay, whatever's easiest for you in the comment, that would be great. Because again, this was intended to be a starting point and have this be a collaborative effort. This is not my document or Andy's document. It has to be our collective document. So thank you for your willingness to do that and provides additional feedback. So Dan. Did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes. Well, first off, been through these a lot of
A
years.
lot.
A lot of what everybody's talking about have been in some of the past forms. In fact, some of the past forms were just multiple page after page after page. And he would fill it out, and it was kind of surprising how often his results mimicked what we put together as results. So that was always interesting. But it would be maybe good if anybody had a blank older form, just so that people could see what we were dealing with in past years. This form is a lot less pages. I think a lot easier to do. But everything you were talking about was on those other forms. So I'm glad to see it being shortened up. At some point, some of it was just, the same questions over and over, just, written a different way. So I think it's a great start. As I say, if we had any of the old forms, just to kind of see what was done in the past. And the other thing I found very interesting was that if this is foilable, I always assumed that being employee type documentation that it would not be, but I don't know if that changes anything we do or not. Andy? You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith and Danny raised a good point. I just want to point out that both the old form and the form that we're talking about in the interviews I suggested, they were conducted by a panel. You guys conducted, but it was anonymous. They didn't name the person that was, they just picked department heads and they didn't list their name to stay out of that type of situation. Just an FYI.
Okay. All right. So really good feedback. So we had a couple of takeaways. We'll look to drive this to one step closer to completion by the end, by our next meeting, maybe the meeting after. The one thing that we just continue to, just in the back of our minds, it's a little out of order, is if there's any compensation change, we have to incorporate that into the budget process. So even if this lingers, because we want to get it right, and we're not looking to rush the process here, but that at some point the board may need to discuss that if we're not through the documentation and we're not comfortable yet with the process for the review and it spills over a little bit. We just, FYI, we just may need to have that discussion, which is typically, again, depending on where you're from, I've had reviews unrelated to compensation. I've had them together. I've had them separate. So it's not unusual to have compensation discussions not around the review. It just depends on the flavor. Depending on our CEO over the 20 years of my last company, 1 year was one way, 1 year was the next way. And so you can do them separately. I personally like to do them together. As you do the review and it filters right down to the money. But people sometimes have different opinions on that. If you have money part of the review, then sometimes the person you're talking to isn't listening because they just want to know if they're getting a raise. Not that you would do that, Andy. I'm just saying the thought process, if you separated them, you could focus specifically on the items and not have the two blend together and create a potential distraction. So anyway, I think we're at a good point here. Obviously, the agenda is long. We've got a few more items to cover. I appreciate the feedback. We'll continue this over the next 3 weeks and see if we can get this finalized by the end of the month or close there too. And unless anyone objects, I would like to turn it back to Andy to continue with 8G and keep moving, see if we can wrap this up shortly. Is everyone okay? I want to rush here, but okay. All right, Mr. Tierney.
So 8G would be any other old business?
Anything else from the board? Anything that we haven't covered? Okay, we'll move to, I guess it's up 9F, Mr. Tierney.
I think 9F would be approved transfer station recycling center disposal rates. Attaches a memo from Paul Forrest, the Public Works Director, recommending a change to the transfer station / recycling center disposal rate fee schedule due to an increase in the disposal of fee charges to the town for tires. Attaches a current fee schedule. So what they did is they went through the entire fee schedule. And we're not looking to make any money on the Hebron residents, but mostly this is an offset. But because the increase in the surcharge for fuel, and then there was an increase to truck tires and vehicle tires, there's a motion there proposes increased cost to both of those.
Okay, I will read the motion and then we can proceed to discussion and asking any clarifying questions. So the proposed motion move that in accordance with Town Code Chapter 305 Solid Waste Article 2 Recycling Section 305-12 fees, the Hebron Board of Selectmen amend the fee structure to increase the fees for tire disposal to $15 per truck tire and $4 per passenger vehicle tire. Motion has been read. Discussion. Seeing none.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see you.
So, I mean,
And then,
the reason why we're increasing the passenger tire is because that's the one that we see the most disposal of in town.
Well, I think I'm going to answer the question correctly. Is they increased both the truck tire, his memo in the back, and then the passenger tire. So it went up from we were presently charging $2.50. He wants to raise that to $4. It's more in line of what we're being charged. And then the truck tire, we're charging $12, and they're looking to get $15. Does that answer your question, Keith?
I mean,
It's our
I guess what I'm asking here is so the scrap cost is 15 and 350, and we're talking about moving to 4 and 15, and the reason why we're not going to 350 and 15 is because why?
That's a
I mean,
great
I
question.
understand it's a 7% fuel surcharge we're trying to get back, but
That's
then why
probably why
wouldn't
you hit.
that's
You
what
hit
I understood. Fuel.
Okay.
Fuel plus the 350. 350 is the set cost, and then we have a fuel offset in there.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Right. And so the majority of tires that we're scrapping at the town are passenger tires, which is why we're not increasing the truck tire to like 1550.
Yes.
Okay, I got you. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, really good. Okay, any other? Dan, did you have your mic open? Do you have something you want to add?
Nope, just move with the question.
Okay, Dan's moving we're moving the question. So based on that, all those in favor signify by saying aye, opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain, please note that. Mr. Larson,
Aye. Dan Larson, aye.
Keith,
Keith Pettit, aye.
thank you, Claudia,
Claudia Riley, aye.
Tiffany, thank you, Claudia.
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Peter Casper, aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Tierney.
Item 9G,
Yes, sir.
fiscal year 2024-25 CIP budget review. The capital improvement plan policy attached prescribes the Board of Selectmen review the town manager CIP budget recommended by February 15th and finalize the CIP budget and 5-year plan by March 1st for inclusion in the upcoming fiscal year budget. Attached is a summary of the fiscal year 24-25 CIP requests totaling $3,282,397. This item will be continued on to the agenda for further discussion and the Board of Selectmen's approval at the February 15th meeting. So I've already met and started to adjust this. So this will be, I wanted you to see the total requests that came in from the department heads, which is that $3,282,000. I'm going to try to get that down to something that's a lot more palatable than that. But keep in mind, last year that was severely cut. So we've got a hole to fill, and we do have some projects that are being backfilled with ARPA funds, so that's going to help a little bit. And we do have a request, if you had time or you looked into the CIP request, they're looking for $1 million fire truck. So due to our undesignated balance at 25%, and the talks about reducing that, I'm going to propose, and you heard the fire chief on here earlier, next meeting you'll be having a grant approval. And we're going to try to apply for $1 million grant to cover the cost of a fire truck. But at the same time, I'm going to propose that we fund that outside, or ask the board to approve funding that outside the CIP process. And then we'll come in with the rest of the items. But I would, just giving you a heads up, that'll be discussed at the next Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Okay, so based on this, Andy, and your continued adjustments, this is for us to look at, absorb, and be prepared to dig in a little more at our next meeting. Is that, or do you want to get into any specifics now?
I can do whatever. I wasn't thinking you wanted to get into any specifics other than seeing the total requests, but I will send something out to you well in advance of what I'm looking to do and what I've reduced. So then if you have questions there, you can either contact myself or
Okay.
via phone or email. We could discuss, or if you have different things you want or answers on, I'll be more than happy to supply those.
Okay, Mr. Larson.
Yeah. As we get into CIP and we keep talking about it, one of our big expense items in CIP, and it's always been a big expense item, is our rolling stock. And in fact, even Peter, I'm sure you will remember when you were on the Board of Finance, there's always that talk of a sinking fund. We've never had the money to do a sinking fund. Some point in time, I don't know if Andy wants to weigh in on it. I don't know if we're going to need to have some sort of a real hard talk as to some of these continuing expenses, on how to set up some sort of a finance structure for them. And, a lot of it is the Board of Finance, yes, but we have skin in the game also. And I don't know, as I say, it's really not for a huge discussion, I don't think, tonight. I don't know if Andy wants to talk about it at all. I'm sure that he's unprepared in a sense for this discussion, but
it's very easy to do. In the town I came from prior to coming here, we had a sinking fund and it worked very well. It's just a percentage of your total budget, and your total budget, and you have to commit to it. You have to have the taxpayers understand it and make a financial commitment to it. And it's similar to a CIP, but when you have a plow truck or a backhoe or a school roof come up, the money's normally there to move some of these projects forward without having a lot of agita. But when I came from East Haddam, we had a sinking fund, and it worked pretty well.
Well, and the challenge is, and not to distract the group too much, but the challenge is when you
get it started.
You get started, but if you're saving 4 or 5 years, you're saving as the price keeps going up. So you're sort of chasing it, and all of a sudden you realize you pick your head up and you budgeted $1 million, and it's $1.3 million by the time you're done. And so if you're better prepared, but the financial the impact for the town is we're going to have to put money somewhere where that means we're going to be having to raise more money effectively, or put money somewhere else, which means potentially some budget impact. So
yeah, that works both ways, because right now, if we can't fund the fire truck for $1 million and you got to push it out 3 years, by the time you get to that 3 years, that truck has gone up 30 or 40%.
Right.
If you purchase it now, you lock in the price. There's no more escalation. Even if you lease it, you can lock in on a price. So that's a double-edged sword. But you're right, Peter.
Yeah. So some things to think about here, and great point, Dan. I mean, the infrastructure, and we all understand the infrastructure, including the rolling stock, is something that cannot be ignored, and everything comes with a significant price tag. You look at the estimates for improving the schools or updating the schools, all that, the work that's coming back. I mean, the price tags are overwhelming, but as a community, we still have to invest in our infrastructure and our stock and make sure we deliver on the promises to our residents. So yeah, not so easy. But good point, Dan, in terms of maybe thinking alternatively how to approach these items in addition to what we're doing with CIP, or at least in conjunction with the discussion on CIP. So is everyone comfortable, at least at this juncture? I'm just looking at the time, that we have a basis of which we can reference this document and continue to prepare ourselves for a more detailed discussion as we move forward into the next steps of the budget process. Good, Keith, good, I see. Okay, great. All right, Andy?
Yeah, I believe the next up is the draft agenda for the February 15th, 2024 meeting.
Great. So as always, take a look at that. Anything you want to change, any suggestions, please bring that forward to Donna and to Andy or to Andy's office, obviously through Donna, and we'll look to adjust that agenda accordingly. So take a peek at that at your convenience. And that moves us to any other new business, Andy.
I do not have any, Mr. Chairman.
The board. Anything new that we should be discussing that hasn't been addressed in the agenda? Don't feel rushed, oh man, just, good. Okay. All right, I don't see anything there. So the consent agenda, item, which is 10 for those following on the agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine in nature, which the board may not need to discuss individually and may be voted on as a group. Any board member who wishes to discuss a particular item in this section may request the chair to remove it for later discussion and a separate vote if necessary. So does anybody want to pull anything out of this consent agenda? Okay. All right. Based on what I see, reactions from the board, I will make a motion that we move that the Board of Selectmen approve the following consent agenda items and motions contained therein as if individually adopted. We have the approval of the minutes, which is item A, the January 18th regular 2024 regular meeting, and approval of the tax refunds as listed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye, opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you, Dan. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you, Peter Casper, aye. The proposed motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Liaison reports, number 11, I'm listed first, AHM, as noted in the past meeting of February 12th would be the meeting of which I will attend. So I'll have an update at that juncture. We'll move to Tiffany, Hebron Board of Ed. Anything you wish to inform the board about?
Sure. Just really quickly, a reminder of the public budget forum, which is on February 7th at 5:30, which I think is next week, which is crazy. The deadline to register is tomorrow, though. So if you're interested in attending, please register in advance. That's all I have.
Thank you. Board of Finance.
Just so they have a number for pizza, Dan.
Okay, I didn't realize I had to pre-register because I am
Well,
planning.
you
on
can
showing
still
up.
go. You just might not get a piece of
Can't eat. You just can't eat
You
any
just might not
pizza.
get to eat.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Did
You know
anybody
how much
else
more
have a
pizza?
question what kind of pizza? Is that out yet?
haven't heard.
I failed to ask, Andy.
Ah.
I'm sorry. I will.
Good thing
I'm
we're
sorry. You're
not
gonna
doing
have to
your
risk
review,
it. What
Tiffany.
can I?
Dan, anything from the Board of Finance?
A couple of things. Elaine had her last meeting this last time. She is going to be gainfully retired and they're suggesting if you want, she's still in the office tomorrow, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yep. So tomorrow will be her last day, and then she's a free lady. Probably the good news for the town is that the state finally did send a check for at least a good portion of the costs for housing of the dogs and cats from that Porter Road house. And there's been a rumor that that house has actually sold. So we will be getting the tax lien monies. Also, I don't know if that has come in yet or where that stands, but so finally some good news there, because that was a lot of money, that the town's been having to pay. And I guess the court case is still ongoing, but it's only over a few of the animals as compared to, the great number of animals that they had before. That's really about it.
Thank you, Dan. Keith, land acquisition.
Land acquisition, the next meeting will be on the 7th. So as soon as I load up on pizza, I will be heading over to have that meeting.
Excellent. Claudia, the RAM Board of Ed.
Yes, so there was a RAM BOE meeting last Monday, the 22nd. Much like the other departments across town, they are beginning their budget process. So the superintendent presented the budget as proposed to the board for the initial consideration and review. So that was like the big topic of the night. From the students' perspective, they were just powering through their midterm exams, a bit interrupted due to Mother Nature. What can we do about that? But they had some delays, some closings, and they had to push some midterms to the next week. So that's all done. The kids are back in regular session now. So that's my report from Ram BOE.
Thank you. And Andy, in the past, you were included in the liaison updates, and I know you're not noted here, but should we be adding you here as well? Because I know in the past you had some updates.
You can always ask. So I got a couple insights. One, I gave a report on AHM. We just got the budget finalized, so those numbers will be added into the budget. But something to ponder as we leave the meeting is we've paid off Burnt Hill Park. The debt has come off. We finally paid that off as of last month. So next we have Company 2 Fire Station, which I think comes off next year. And then we have the CNG project, which will be coming off the following year. So we're in pretty good shape with the debt coming off.
Thank you. Okay, I will not reread the public comment description unless someone wishes me to at the beginning, because I have done so already at the beginning of the meeting. But if someone's jumping on and wasn't part of that, please restrict your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Donna, is there any public comment?
There is nothing new, just a couple comments. Tanya Mauer and Rebecca Tamsin thanking the board for the appointments this evening, and nothing new besides that.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And with that, that moves us to section 3. If I may call on Tiffany.
Move to adjourn at 9:26 p.m.
Thank you. And Claudia seconded it. That was necessary just for fun. So thank you all very much for your time. And I know it was a long meeting. And it was going to go long. So thank you for your patience and understanding and cooperation as we move through a substantive meeting. So thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.